you are trying to shut down gun stores, there's going to be fewer firearms in circulation. It's going to become very, very difficult for people to buy firearms. It might become more expensive for people to buy firearms because if I'm a gun store, maybe I up my prices because I'm having to fund my attorney bills for every time I get audited, right?
Right.
We are the Armed Attorneys. Today we're talking about the ATF's ongoing battle to yank every FFL dealer's license that they can and shut down as many gun stores as possible. We're going to talk about the legal tactic they've been using to do this. We're going to talk about a recent court case in which gun stores are fighting back, and the ATF's dangerously clever and successful tactic to fight those court battles. But before we get started, show your support for the Second Amendment by hitting the like button.
And today's video is brought to you by our friends over at American Hartford Gold.
As part of the firearms community, one lesson's clear. Relying on the government for protection, whether it's your life or your wealth, isn't smart. With soaring inflation, major economies abandoning the dollar, bank failures, and talks of government control through a digital dollar, the current state of affairs is uncertain.
Having a plan to safeguard your life savings from failing corporations and currency conflicts is crucial. That's where American Hartford Gold comes in, a precious metals dealer we trust.
They can guide you in diversifying your wealth portfolio with physical gold and silver. They offer incredible products, customer service, have a 5-star rating with thousands of reviews, and an A+ from the Better Business Bureau. On top of that, they support the channel and have an incredible offer to share with our community.
When you contact American Hartford Gold, tell them the Armed Attorney sent you, and they'll give you up to $5,000 of free silver on your first order. To learn more, text attorney to 65532 or call 866-856-2380 or check out the link in the description. Before we get into the court case and the kind of tactics the ATF is using to elude being held responsible, I think it's worth going over a little bit of background. And this all revolves around the ATF's change in what they consider a willful violation. So as part of the Gun Control Act, federal firearms license dealers, they got a lot of rules they're supposed to follow. And in order to renew their licenses, keep their licenses, and not have their licenses revoked, they got to follow the rules. And if they willfully, flagrantly disregard the rules, the ATF says, hey, guess what? You don't get to have a license anymore. But there's been a change in what the ATF considers willful just with the Biden administration.
Yes. So the Biden administration, and this was early in the administration, changed policy and said, look, we have a zero tolerance policy now. So virtually every violation we find, we are going to interpret as being a willful violation. It's zero tolerance. We're going to yank as many licenses as humanly possible. And this has resulted in, dealers who are really engaging in clerical type errors, which, remember, you have employees who are paid hourly who, some employees are very, very good, right? But some don't care that much. You're always going to have employees who don't care about your business, right?
Well, and biggest Achilles heel of this whole operation, they're human beings.
They're human beings too, right? So even if it's like the best employee in the whole world, like we're talking about violations in which, people are misprinting street numbers
and writing country instead of county.
Right.
USA.
It is tiny, tiny little violations that in the past would have gotten you maybe a warning letter. Virtually
A conference.
Maybe a conference, right? But now we are seeing increased efforts to yank those licenses.
Yeah. There's some shocking numbers here I wanted to point out real fast. So 157 licenses revoked in 2023. There's only 88 in 2022. And then the last 6 months of 2021, there was only 5. So if you see how this ramped up real fast, they had 80 FFLs voluntarily surrender their licenses in 2023. So it's pretty bad.
It's very bad. So what are we doing about it? Not us.
Yeah, well,
what are the gun stores doing about it?
Well, I'll say there's one legislative effort.
Yeah.
Representative Tracy Mann, this is Republican out of Kansas, filed the Federal Licensing Enforcement Act, the Rifle Act, and this would define what willful is. The Congress would define what willful is and make
that sounds good.
Because the ATF, this is their comfort zone right now, living in this shapeless animal, gray area, administrative confusion. They love living in that area and they hate it when things get defined.
So that would be lovely. But in the meantime, and again, I will say, as I've said before, that things not getting done in Congress, I think generally is good for everyone.
Yeah.
However, when you really want something done, it's not going to get done That's a little bit worse. But in the meantime, we have a gun store out of the state of Florida who filed a federal lawsuit and said, essentially, look, you're trying to yank my license for this. You have violated both the Second Amendment and the Administrative Procedures Act, and they're taking the ATF to court over it.
Let's talk about this court case. Let's talk about the decision the court made and how the ATF is eluding accountability. So, what are the grounds the ATF is relying on? It's this change in the definition of what they consider willful, and that's how they're going after all of these gun stores. So, let's talk about this case. If you want to check this case out yourself, this is in the United States District Court for the Northern District of Florida. We have Kiloton Tactical suing the ATF. So essentially, they were applying to renew their federal firearms license. They had a Type 7 license. They wanted to renew. The ATF said no. Kiloton did two things simultaneously. They asked for a hearing on their refusal or their denial of the renewal, and they filed suit in this Northern District of Texas case. So they went ahead and they're litigating these things. They had their hearing, and while this case was pending, and then what happened?
Well, so what happened is that the ATF actually decided that they were just going to go ahead and issue the license. But we have this court case. I'm going to tell you what they alleged in it and then what the judge did and why the ATF is actually pretty clever. So they have alleged in this case against the ATF that essentially this policy is both a violation of the Second Amendment and a violation of the Administrative Procedures Act.
You love you some APA
I
violations.
love APA violations. But I mean, I will tell you, any Second Amendment lawyer worth their salt now, post Bruin, needs to be alleging a Second Amendment violation in every case, even if, as here, it is likely they consider the non-constitutional issue first and decide on that. You always, always, always need to challenge this as a Second Amendment violation as well. So they did exactly the right thing here. They said, listen, it violates the Second Amendment because you are trying to shut down gun stores. There's going to be fewer firearms in circulation. It's going to become very, very difficult for people to buy firearms. It might become more expensive for people to buy firearms because if I'm a gun store, maybe I up my prices because I'm having to fund my attorney bills for every time I get audited, right? So you're going to price people out and you're going to make it too difficult to obtain a firearm. That's a Second Amendment violation. But also, we have this issue, which is that in the ATF's rule-making capacity, and I know that thousands of you right now are like, ATF's not allowed to make laws. And we agree with you in theory. However, in practice, the courts let this happen. So that's why we have to talk about it. So in their rule-making authority, they get to take those laws promulgated by Congress, and they get to make rules about the enforcement. And essentially, the argument here is, there's no definition of willful. You cannot just sua sponte decide on the definition, change it around. You need to actually promulgate a rule, which you have not done here. You have not promulgated any rule that changes the definition of willful. So you have violated the APA. Frankly, both good arguments, in my opinion.
Yeah, especially, and this is how we know they have changed the rule, because we look at those the 2021 enforcements, 5, now we're going nearly to 200. So something has changed in the enforcement mechanism.
And we know, they put out the written policies. They show FFL dealers that written zero tolerance policy every time they get audited.
Yeah,
it exists.
Yeah, we talked to a lawyer who he had a client, FFL client, who said, "Hey, I got this violation ding," and he called up his local ATF office. They hadn't even heard about the rule change. This is back when the Biden administration, by fiat made an executive order talking about this, gun safety package. This was part of that package. If you're listening, I'm making finger quotes. But we know that there was a change in the rule because we see this giant ramp up, and they didn't go through the rulemaking process.
Right. So what does the court do with this? Again, good arguments.
Yes.
However, because the ATF, after hearing, was like, this guy's putting up quite a bit of a fight. And I think the ATF realized, too, these are pretty darn good arguments.
Right.
They decided to go ahead and issue the license, which means the case is mooted.
Yeah, the Kiloton case, they were asking for a preliminary injunction stopping the enforcement of this change in willful policy in the court. We know one of the factor or the criteria that they're looking at is there irreparable harm. Well, the court says No, we do
Yes.
not have irreparable harm because, hey, look, you got your license. So,
Yep. And they didn't bring forward a whole bunch of other plaintiffs who were suffering the same. Now, had they done that,
right.
I think we might have a different story on our hands, but there is no longer a legal issue right before the court.
Yeah, but we see that, 80 FFLs voluntarily surrendering their licenses in 2023 because they just don't have it stinks to fight the federal government. It stinks. It takes a lot of resources. And so there's just this tactic of grinding FFLs down and seeing, it's almost like the, compliance monster we see with taxes. The vast majority of people, go along to get along because they don't want to stick their head up above out
Even
of the
though
trenches.
income tax is illegal.
I don't believe in that.
I still pay it.
I don't believe in taxes. I don't believe taxes are real. But you see this, and they're driving FFLs out of business.
They are. I think we have not for the sweeping change we want, but we have a decent roadmap for if you personally are the victim of this ATF nonsense, file a lawsuit. I hope you got lawyers on call, because you file a lawsuit, call them up, get it filed, because there's a pretty decent chance here the ATF's going to say, all right, here you go.
Yeah.
Here's your license.
Yeah. And I think Kiloton was helped out by Gun Owners Foundation in this case. So,
shout out.
Yeah, maybe that's a resource for you. But we hope you enjoyed this discussion. If you did, consider subscribing, hitting that like button, and help us fight the anti-2A algorithm by sharing this video.
And if you're interested in learning a little bit more about that zero tolerance change that the ATF implemented, check out this video here. And until next time, we're the Armed Attorneys.